All right, team, welcome back. It's Kai, and it's great to see you're continuing on this journey with me. In this video, we're picking up right where we left off in our Project Management Professional PMP series, covering questions 401 through 425. Let's keep the momentum going. Question 401. A project manager has recently taken over a project and notices that a client team member often halts progress due to a lack of understanding of some project elements. The former project manager gave the new project manager a complete list of people to communicate with, and this client team member is not on it. What should the project manager do? A. Submit a change request to cover extra hours associated with project meetings. B. Update the communications matrix to ensure that client team member is included. C. Speak with the client team member about the continuous delays during project meetings. D. Increase the project meeting frequency and duration to allow for the extra work required. This question tests your ability to identify the root cause of a stakeholder issue and apply the correct process-oriented solution. The problem is that a team member is halting progress, and the root cause is their lack of understanding, which is a direct result of them being left off the communication list. The solution is to fix the flawed communication plan. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Submit a change request to cover extra hours associated with project meetings. This is an incorrect answer. This is a reactive measure that addresses a symptom, longer meetings, rather than the root cause. The goal should be to solve the communication problem, to make the meetings more efficient. B. Update the communications matrix to ensure that client team member is included. This is a correct answer. This is the most direct solution that addresses the root cause. The communications matrix, a part of the communications management plan, defines who receives what information. The project manager has identified that this team member was mistakenly omitted. The correct action is to update the matrix to formally include them, ensuring they receive the information they need to understand the project and stop halting progress. C. Speak with the client team member about the continuous delays during project meetings. This is an incorrect answer. This approach blames a stakeholder for a problem that was caused by the project's own flawed communication plan. It is confrontational and does not solve the stakeholder's need for information. D. Increase the project meeting frequency and duration to allow for the extra work required. This is an incorrect answer. This is another reactive measure that accepts the inefficiency. A proactive project manager should fix the underlying communication problem to make the existing meetings more effective, not simply schedule more of them. Question 402. The stakeholders in an Agile project are upset because some of the final products do not meet their expectations. When the project manager asks the team about the stakeholders' expectations, the team only mentions the project's objective. In addition to reminding the team about the importance of stakeholder expectations, interest, and influence in the project, how should the project manager improve this situation? A. Motivate the team to create and use an Agile project charter. B. Encourage the team to use an information radiator to analyze expectations. C. Teach the team how to use the user persona technique. D. Remind the team that face-to-face communication is the best method. This question tests your knowledge of Agile techniques for building a deep, shared understanding of user needs. The root cause of the problem is that the team has a high-level understanding of the project's objective, but lacks a detailed, empathetic understanding of the end users. The project manager needs to introduce a tool that helps the team see the project from the user's point of view. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Motivate the team to create and use an Agile project charter. This is an incorrect answer. A project charter is a high-level document created at the beginning of a project. It contains the project objectives, which the team already understands. It will not provide the detailed, user-level perspective that is missing. B. Encourage the team to use an information radiator to analyze expectations. This is an incorrect answer. An information radiator, like a Kanban board or burn-down chart, is a tool for displaying and broadcasting project status and information. It is not a tool for analyzing user expectations. C. Teach the team how to use the user persona technique. This is a correct answer. This is a specific and highly effective Agile technique to solve this exact problem. User personas are fictional characters created to represent the project's different user types. By teaching the team to create and use personas, the project manager helps them develop a deep and empathetic understanding of a user's goals, motivations, and pain points. This user-centered perspective is crucial for building a product that meets expectations. D. Remind the team that face-to-face communication is the best method. This is an incorrect answer. While face-to-face communication is a core Agile principle, it is a general statement. It does not provide the team with a specific technique or tool to improve the quality and focus of their conversations about user needs. Question 403. A project team is executing a large regulatory project comprised of a multitude of internal and external stakeholders. An initial impact analysis revealed several systems, including an enhancement to existing modules as well as new builds. After completion of the initial design workshop, the team conducted a brainstorming session to better understand the types of likely users. Which technique will best serve this purpose? A. Power user grid. B. Personas. C. Power influence grid. D. Salience model. This question tests your knowledge of specific tools and techniques used in project management, particularly those related to understanding end users. The team's goal is to understand the types of likely users, which is a key activity in user-centered design and requirements gathering. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Power user grid. This is an incorrect answer. This is not a standard or recognized technique in project management or user experience design. B. Personas. This is a correct answer. This is a direct definition match. Personas are a technique used to create detailed, fictional characters that represent the different types of users for a product. Creating personas helps the project team to build empathy and a shared understanding of their users' goals, motivations, and behaviors. C. Power influence grid. This is an incorrect answer. A power/influence grid or power/interest grid is a tool used for stakeholder analysis. It helps to categorize stakeholders to plan an engagement strategy. It is not used to understand the characteristics of user types. D. Salience model. This is an incorrect answer. The salience model is another tool used for stakeholder analysis, categorizing stakeholders based on their power, legitimacy, and urgency. It is not used for understanding user types. Question 404. An IT company's office is closed abruptly due to a new government restriction. All employees are now working remotely. Project Team A has a critical project delivery due in 2 weeks. The project manager, apprehensive about this sudden change, instantly emails a customer explaining that the project delivery will be delayed. The customer is unhappy with this and has escalated the issue to senior management. What should the project manager have done differently? A. Disclose the senior management in confidence, then communicated the delay to the customer. B. Communicated a new delivery date to the customer along with the news about the delay. C. Assess the situation with the project stakeholders first and communicated the impact to the customer. D. Spoken to the customer on the phone and explained the reason for the delay instead of writing an email. This question tests your ability to handle a sudden, disruptive event in a professional and structured manner. The project manager's mistake was reacting emotionally, apprehensive, and making an assumption about a delay without first analyzing the situation. A professional project manager must gather facts and assess the impact before communicating with the customer. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Disclose the senior management in confidence, then communicate the delay to the customer. This is an incorrect answer. This action is still based on the same flawed assumption that a delay is inevitable. The project manager should not communicate a delay to anyone until an impact analysis has been performed. B. Communicated a new delivery date to the customer along with the news about the delay. This is an incorrect answer. The project manager has done no analysis, so they have no basis for proposing a new delivery date. This would be unprofessional guesswork. C. Assess the situation with the project stakeholders first and communicated the impact to the customer. This is a correct answer. This is a proper assess first, then act sequence. The project manager should have immediately met with the key stakeholders, primarily the project team, to assess the situation. This would involve determining if the team can still meet the deadline while working remotely. Only after this analysis is complete would the project manager have the facts needed to communicate the actual impact to the customer. D. Spoken to the customer on the phone and explained the reason for the delay instead of writing an email. This is an incorrect answer. The problem was not the method of communication, email versus phone, but the premature and unanalyzed content of the communication. Question 405. During the project planning phase, a project manager is informed that they cannot start one activity before another department implements the required IT system. What should the project manager do? A. Fast-track this dependency to avoid delaying the project. B. Perform integrated change control. C. Ask IT to prioritize the needed system to meet the schedule. D. Include the dependency in the project schedule. This question tests your knowledge of the fundamental sequence activities process within project schedule management. When a dependency between activities is identified during the planning phase, the project manager's first and most important action is to formally incorporate it into project plan to ensure the timeline is realistic. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Fast-track this dependency to avoid delaying the project. This is an incorrect answer. Fast-tracking is a schedule compression technique. In this case, the dependency is mandatory. The activity cannot start without the system, so it cannot be fast-tracked. B. Perform integrated change control. This is an incorrect answer. The project is still in the planning phase, and this dependency is being identified as part of the initial plan creation. The integrated change control process is used to manage changes to an already approved baseline, which does not exist yet. C. Ask IT to prioritize the needed system to meet the schedule. This is an incorrect answer. While the project manager will need to coordinate with the IT department, this is a communication and stakeholder management step. The most fundamental first action is to ensure the dependency is correctly documented within the project's own plan. D. Include the dependency in the project schedule. This is a correct answer. This is a correct foundational planning step. When an external dependency is identified, the project manager must include it in the project schedule as a logical relationship. In this case, a finish-to-start dependency. This ensures that the project's timeline is realistic and accurately reflects this external constraint from the very beginning. Question 406. A construction company recently won the bid for a project to build a cable bridge. A project charter has been prepared, and a project manager has been assigned. The project manager is creating a work breakdown structure, WBS, for the project. To what level should the project manager decompose their project? A. To the lowest level where cost and duration can be estimated and managed. B. To the level where the highest level quality is maintained. C. To level 4 of the schedule for bridge construction. D. To the level where the bridge can be constructed safely. This question tests your knowledge of a fundamental scope management process. Create WBS. The key to this process is knowing how far to decompose the work. There is a specific, standard guideline for determining the appropriate level of detail. Let's analyze the options in order. A. To the lowest level where cost and duration can be estimated and managed. This is a correct answer. This is a textbook definition of a work package, which is the lowest level of the WBS. The purpose of decomposition is to break the work down into pieces that are small enough to be reliably estimated for cost and duration, and managed, assigned to a responsible individual or team and tracked. B. To the level where the highest level of quality is maintained. This is an incorrect answer. Quality is a project requirement and constraint, but it does not define the structural level of the WBS. Quality standards are applied to the work packages. They don't determine their size. C. To level 4 of the schedule for bridge construction. This is an incorrect answer. There is no universal rule that a WBS must be decomposed to a specific number of levels. The appropriate depth of a WBS depends on the size and complexity of the project, not an arbitrary number. D. To the level where the bridge can be constructed safely. This is an incorrect answer. Safety is a critical, non-negotiable requirement for project, but it does not define the level of decomposition for the WBS. Safety procedures must be integrated into the execution of the work packages. Question 407. A project team is performing extremely well when it comes to delivering the value-added features to the customer in each sprint. However, they are missing the documentation portion, and the project manager must find a way to make sure the documentation is kept current. Which action should the project manager take? A. Assign a dedicated resource to work on the documentation during the project. B. Create a specific sprint to deliver the project documentation. C. Focus on the documentation after the features are delivered. D. Make documentation a standard part of the definition of done DoD. This question tests your understanding of a fundamental Agile concept, the definition of done DoD. It addresses the common challenge of ensuring that essential non-feature work, such as documentation, is completed as part of the regular development cycle rather than being postponed or forgotten. The key is to find a systemic, integrated solution that builds quality into the team's process. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Assign a dedicated resource to work on the documentation during the project. This is an incorrect answer. This approach creates a silo and goes against the Agile principle of a cross-functional, collaborative team. Separating documentation from the development work can lead to the documentation being out of sync with the actual features and creates a single point of failure. The goal is for the entire team to be responsible for delivering a complete increment. B. Create a specific sprint to deliver the project documentation. This is an incorrect answer. This is a common Agile anti-pattern. It treats documentation as a separate phase, which is a characteristic of predictive waterfall approach. Deferring all documentation to a special documentation sprint creates a large batch of work, increases the risk of inaccuracies, and violates the principle of delivering a potentially shippable increment at the end of every sprint. C. Focus on the documentation after the features are delivered. This is an incorrect answer. Similar to option B, this is a waterfall-like approach. Postponing documentation often leads to it being rushed, inaccurate, as details are forgotten or skipped entirely. This creates a form of technical debt. Agile principles advocate for completing all aspects of feature, including documentation, within the same iteration. D. Make documentation a standard part of the definition of done. DoD, this is a correct answer. This is the ideal Agile solution. The definition of done is a shared checklist of all criteria that a user story or feature must meet to be considered complete. By including update relevant documentation as a mandatory item in the DoD, the team establishes a formal non-negotiable quality gate. This ensures that no feature can be marked as done until its corresponding documentation is also complete, integrating the task into the regular workflow and making it a shared responsibility of the entire team. Question 408. One team member is complaining about an agreement made during the last meeting. That team member was present at the meeting and participated in the decisions registered in the meeting minutes. What should the project manager do next? A. Schedule a new meeting to evaluate the agreement and negotiate a new one. B. Meet with the team member and search for the root cause of their behavior. C. Arrange an additional meeting with the team to communicate the agreement made during the last meeting. D. Talk with the team member and explain that once the meeting ended, the agreement must be respected. This question tests the project manager's conflict resolution and leadership skills, particularly their ability to use emotional intelligence. The situation involves a team member who is not openly disagreeing, but complaining after the fact, which points to a potential underlying issue beyond the agreement itself. The key is to address the individual's behavior and its root cause in a constructive manner before taking broader, team-level action. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Schedule a new meeting to evaluate the agreement and negotiate a new one. This is an incorrect answer. This action is premature and could be disruptive. It immediately undermines the validity of the team's original decision-making process and could set a precedent that any decision can be easily overturned, leading to instability. It addresses the symptom, the complaint, without understanding the cause. B. Meet with a team member and search for the root cause of their behavior. This is a correct answer. This is the most effective and emotionally intelligent first step. The team member's behavior, Agreeing in the meeting but complaining later is a sign of a deeper issue. By meeting one-on-one, the project manager creates a safe space to understand the real problem. Perhaps the team member felt unheard, was pressured into agreeing, has new information, or is facing external pressure. Identifying this root cause is essential before any other action can be taken. C. Arrange an additional meeting with the team to communicate the agreement made during the last meeting. This is an incorrect answer. The problem is not a lack of communication, as the team member was present and participated in the original decision. Recommunicating the agreement to the entire team fails to address the specific individual's issue and would likely be a waste of the other team member's time. D. Talk with the team member and explain that once the meeting ended, the agreement must be respected. This is an incorrect answer. This is a confrontational and authoritarian approach that shuts down communication. While agreement should be respected, this response fails to investigate why the complaint is happening. It can damage a relationship with the team member, lower morale, and leave the underlying issue unresolved, where it will likely resurface later. Question 409. A product is undergoing its last iterative increment, and the project team is ready to make the final deployment. The company's financial manager is asking the project team to complete the deployment and close the project as soon as possible so it can be capitalized. What should the project manager do? A. Expedite the final deployment and close the project. B. Ignore the stakeholder's request as there is a defined plan. C. Update the acceptance criteria for the iteration. D. Check on the definition of done DoD for the project. This question tests the project manager's adherence to quality processes and professional standards, particularly in the face of stakeholder pressure. The scenario involves a stakeholder requesting an expedited project closure for financial reasons. The key is to understand that project closure is not an arbitrary decision, but a formal process governed by pre-agreed criteria to ensure all work is truly complete. This directly relates to the importance of the definition of done DoD. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Expedite the final deployment and close the project. This is an incorrect answer. Giving in to stakeholder pressure without ensuring all quality criteria have been met is irresponsible. Expediting or skipping final checks could lead to deploying an incomplete or defective product, which could have significant negative consequences later. The project manager's duty is to follow the agreed-upon process, not to take shortcuts. B. Ignore the stakeholder's request as there is a defined plan. This is an incorrect answer. While sticking to plan is important, completely ignoring a key stakeholder like the financial manager is poor stakeholder engagement. A professional project manager should acknowledge the stakeholder's request and then explain the correct process that must be followed, rather than simply dismissing them. C. Update the acceptance criteria for the iteration. This is an incorrect answer. Acceptance criteria are specific to user stories or features. The broader, more comprehensive checklist for the entire increment's completeness is the definition of done. Changing criteria at the last minute simply to make closure easier is inappropriate and undermines the quality process. D. Check on the definition of done DoD for the project. This is a correct answer. The definition of done is the team's shared agreement on all the criteria that must be met for the product increment to be considered complete and releasable. Before closing the project and deploying, the project manager's primary responsibility is to validate that the final increment has met every single item on the DoD checklist. This provides an objective, process-driven basis for making the deployment decision and ensures quality standards are upheld. Question 410. A company is moving its headquarters to another city. The project manager responsible for the assignment has been using a predictive approach during the transition. However, the information systems will be migrated using an agile approach. The project manager needs to decide which kind of contract to sign with the vendor responsible for migrating the systems. The project manager is concerned about controlling finances while delivering results. How should the project manager address this situation? A. Sign a single agreement for the whole project. B. Confirm payment after each project retrospective. C. Negotiate payment after all project migration is completed. D. Use fixed price increments as user stories are completed. This question tests your knowledge of Agile contracting models. The scenario involves selecting an appropriate contract type for an Agile portion of a larger project, with a specific need to balance financial control with iterative delivery. The key is to choose a contract structure that supports Agile principles of delivering value in small increments, rather than forcing a traditional, rigid payment structure onto an adaptive project. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Sign a single agreement for the whole project. This is an incorrect answer. A single agreement, such as a firm fixed price contract for the entire scope, is a characteristic of a predictive approach. It is unsuitable for an Agile project where the scope is expected to be refined over time. This would either lock the client into a fixed scope, destroying agility, or expose a vendor to unacceptable risk. B. Confirm payment after each project retrospective. This is an incorrect answer. The retrospective is a process improvement meeting for the project team. It is not a value delivery or acceptance event. Tying payments to an internal team meeting is illogical and does not connect the financial transaction to the actual delivery of value to the customer. Payment should be linked to accepted deliverables. C. Negotiate payment after all project migration is completed. This is an incorrect answer. Deferring all payment until the very end of the project is extremely risky for the vendor and provides no mechanism for client to control finances or validate progress along the way. This structure offers no flexibility and is contrary to the iterative nature of Agile. D. Use fixed price increments as user stories are completed. This is the correct answer. This describes a common and effective Agile contracting model. In this model, the project is broken down into small, valuable increments, like a set of user stories or feature, and a fixed price is agreed upon for each increment. This approach provides financial control for the client. They know the cost of each piece of value. While allowing for flexibility, they can change the priority of future increments. It aligns the payment schedule directly with the delivery of verified results. Question 411. A project requires testing of the final product to be done at another department's testing facility, which is known for having low availability. This situation could potentially impact the project schedule. What should the project manager do next? A. Update the project schedule. B. Update the issue log. C. Update the lessons learned register. D. Update the risk register. This question tests the fundamental ability to differentiate between a risk and an issue, which is a critical concept in project management. The key is to analyze the nature of the situation described. The phrase could potentially impact is a clear indicator that the situation is an uncertain future event, not a problem that has already occurred. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Update the project schedule. This is an incorrect answer. The project manager should not change the schedule based on a potential problem. The schedule baseline should only be modified through a formal change control process, typically after a risk has materialized into an issue and an impact analysis has been completed. Changing the schedule now would be a premature reaction to an uncertain event. B. Update the issue log. This is an incorrect answer. An issue is a problem, obstacle, or question that is currently happening and impacting the project. The scenario describes a situation that could potentially cause a delay in the future. Since the event has not yet occurred, it is a risk, not an issue. Documenting it in the issue log would be incorrect. C. Update the lessons learned register. This is an incorrect answer. The lessons learned register is used to document knowledge gained during a project, so it can be applied to later phases or future projects. It is not the appropriate place to track and manage active, potential problems for the current project. D. Update the risk register. This is a correct answer. The situation described is a classic example of a project risk, an uncertain event, the testing facility being unavailable, that, if it occurs, will have a negative impact on a project objective, the schedule. The proper first step is to formally document this risk in the risk register. This allows the team to perform further analysis and develop a proactive risk response plan. Question 412. A transportation company is developing a new tool to improve their delivery process. As project development for Sprint 2 began, the Executive Steering Committee made a request to include a new capability to perform a what-if analysis in the tool based on the customer demand and forecast. What should the project manager do next? A. Revise the project schedule and budget based on the additional scope and review with the team. B. Include the new capability to the product backlog and continue activities based on the current plan. C. Perform an impact analysis on the schedule and budget based on the additional scope. D. Analyze and negotiate with the Executive Steering Committee regarding this new request. This question tests your understanding of the integrated change control process. When a stakeholder, even a senior one, requests a change, the project manager must follow a formal process rather than reacting immediately. The crucial first step is to analyze the potential consequences of the proposed change on the project's objectives and constraints. This principle of analyze before you act is fundamental to professional project management. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Revise the project schedule and budget based on the additional scope and review with the team. This is an incorrect answer. This action implies that the change has already been accepted and approved. The project manager is jumping directly to implementation planning without first analyzing the impact or going through a formal approval process. Revising the project baselines is a step that happens after a change is approved. B. Include the new capability to the product backlog and continue activities based on the current plan. This is an incorrect answer. While the new capability would eventually be added to the product backlog, if approved, this action is too passive. It ignores the critical step of analyzing the impact of a significant request from the Executive Steering Committee. A proper impact analysis is needed to inform the product owner and stakeholders about the necessary trade-offs. C. Perform an impact analysis on the schedule and budget based on the additional scope. This is the correct answer. This is the essential first step in the change control process. Before a decision can be made to approve, reject, or defer the request, the project manager must first understand its full impact. This analysis will determine how the new capability will affect the project schedule, budget, resources, and risks. The results of this analysis provide the necessary data for an informed discussion with stakeholders. D. Analyze and negotiate with the Executive Steering Committee regarding this new request. This is an incorrect answer because it is premature. It is impossible to have a meaningful negotiation with the steering committee without first having the data from an impact analysis. The project manager cannot discuss trade-offs regarding schedule or budget without knowing what those trade-offs are. The impact analysis, option C, must be completed before a negotiation can take place. Question 413. The scope of a project is to replace the street signs within a 10 kilometers radius. The client does not want to sign the project closure report if the radius is not extended by 1 kilometer to be aligned with the council's development plan. What should the project manager do? A. Delay the approval and ask the project sponsor for additional funding. B. Contact the council and ask for their approval to extend the scope of the project. C. Initiate a new project and discuss the request because it came in too late. D. Obtain formal acceptance of completed work and submit a change request. This question tests the project manager's ability to manage project closure and handle last-minute scope change requests, often referred to as scope creep. The core issue is a client's refusal to accept the completed work while simultaneously demanding additional scope. The key is to follow the formal processes for both scope validation and change management, separating the acceptance of completed work from the request for new work. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Delay the approval and ask the project sponsor for additional funding. This is an incorrect answer. This action incorrectly combines two separate issues. By delaying the approval of the completed work, the project manager fails to formally close out the original scope. Furthermore, asking for funding is premature because a change request has not yet been analyzed or formally submitted. This approach allows the client to hold the original project hostage. B. Contact the council and ask for their approval to extend the scope of the project. This is an incorrect answer. The project manager's authority comes from the project sponsor and the client, not an external body like the council. While the council's plan is a reason for the change, they are not the ones to approve a change to the project scope and baselines. This bypasses a project's established governance. C. Initiate a new project and discuss the request because it came in too late. This is an incorrect answer. While the additional work might eventually become a new project, this is not the immediate next step. The request must first be handled through the current project's change management process. This option also fails to address the immediate problem of getting the original work formally accepted. D. Obtain formal acceptance of the completed work and submit a change request. This is a correct answer. This is the most professional and process-driven approach, as it correctly separates the two distinct activities. Obtain formal acceptance for the completed work. The project manager must pursue the client's sign-off of the work that was completed according to the original, agreed-upon scope, the 10 kilometers radius. This is a validate scope process. Submit a change request. The client's request for an additional 1 kilometer is new scope. It must be treated as a formal change request, which can then be analyzed for its impact on cost and schedule and submitted for approval. This follows a perform integrated change control process. Question 414. After a project team has been working on a project for several months, the project is canceled. The project sponsor is putting pressure on the project manager to perform closeout duties as fast as possible so that the project team can move on to other work. The project sponsor has instructed the team not to waste time archiving the project artifacts for the canceled project. How should the project manager handle this situation? A. Archive the project artifacts on the project manager's local computer for future reference. B. Document the project sponsor's instructions as the archive project artifacts. C. Comply with the project sponsor's request to not archive the project artifacts. D. Consult with the Project Management Office, PMO, for guidance on project artifacts. This question tests the project manager's professional responsibility and adherence to organizational governance. The core conflict is between a directive from a powerful stakeholder, the project sponsor, and standard project management procedures. The key is to recognize that even a canceled project must follow proper closeout procedures, and the project manager should seek guidance from the appropriate organizational body when instructed to deviate from these standards. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Archive the project artifacts on the project manager's local computer for future reference. This is an incorrect answer. While the intent to preserve the artifacts is good, this action is improper. Project artifacts are organizational assets and should be stored in a central, official repository as defined by the organization's policies. Storing them on a local computer creates an inaccessible silo of information and violates proper knowledge management procedures. B. Document the project sponsor's instructions as the archive project artifacts. This is an incorrect answer. This action fails to preserve the valuable knowledge generated by the project. Documenting the instruction to not archive is not a substitute for actually archiving the project's documents, plans, and lessons learned, which will result in a significant loss of organizational knowledge. C. Comply with the project sponsor's request to not archive the project artifacts. This is an incorrect answer. This represents a failure of professional responsibility. Archiving artifacts from a canceled project is a crucial part of knowledge management, providing valuable lessons learned for future projects. Blindly following a sponsor's instruction to skip a standard organizational process is detrimental to the organization. D. Consult with the Project Management Office, PMO, for guidance on project artifacts. This is a correct answer. The PMO is typically the governing body responsible for defining and enforcing project management standards, policies, and procedures, including project closure and archiving. When a project manager receives an instruction from a sponsor that contradicts these established organizational policies, the correct and professional course of action is to consult the PMO for clarification and guidance. The PMO has the authority to confirm the correct procedure and help resolve the conflict with the sponsor. Question 415. A project manager is reviewing the requirements of a large program. Which requirements should the project team prioritize to avoid getting fines? A. Certifying sustainable products. B. Establishing company processes. C. Complying with new regulations. D. Developing new product lines. This question tests your ability to prioritize requirements based on their nature and associated risks. The key to answering this question is to identify which type of requirement, if not met, would result in a direct financial penalty or fine. This points directly to the concept of mandatory compliance, which is a critical constraint for any project or program. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Certifying sustainable products. This is an incorrect answer. While sustainability certification may be a valuable business or marketing objective, it is not typically a mandatory legal requirement that will result in fines if missed. It is often a voluntary standard or strategic goal, which will be prioritized based on business value, not legal penalty. B. Establishing company processes. This is an incorrect answer. Establishing internal company processes is an operational or organizational improvement goal. While important for efficiency, failing to establish a new internal process would not typically lead to external fines from a regulatory body. C. Complying with new regulations. This is a correct answer. Regulations are rules or laws enacted by a government or other authority. Compliance with these regulations is mandatory. Failure to comply directly leads to legal and financial penalties, including fines. Therefore, to avoid getting fines, the project team must prioritize requirements related to regulatory compliance above other types of business or functional requirements. D. Developing new product lines. This is an incorrect answer. Developing new product lines is a strategic business objective aimed at generating revenue and growth. While failing to do so would result in a loss of opportunity, it would not result in the company being fined. It is a strategic requirement, not a compliance requirement. Question 416. A project manager and project team have brought a project back on track after mapping and removing impediments. During the current sprint, the team reported that an impediment that previously caused major delays has appeared again. The team tried implementing the same mitigation tasks that worked previously. However, the tasks are not having the same result with the impediment. What should the project manager do? A. Escalate the issue with an impediment to the project sponsor. B. Implement the mitigation plans listed in the organizational process assets, OPAs. C. Use a contingency budget to implement schedule compression. D. Reassess the issue as part of monitoring and controlling. This question tests your understanding of the monitor and control project work process, particularly how to respond when a previously resolved issue reoccurs and the original solution is no longer effective. The key principle is that when a situation changes, a project manager must re-engage in an analysis cycle rather than immediately escalating or applying a different solution without investigation. The first step is to reassess the problem to understand why it has changed. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Escalate the issue with an impediment to the project sponsor. This is an incorrect answer. Escalation is appropriate when the project manager lacks the authority or resources to solve a problem. In this case, the team has not yet fully analyzed the new situation. Escalating to the sponsor before reassessing the issue and exploring other options is premature and shows a lack of problem-solving initiative. B. Implement the mitigation plans listed in the organizational process assets. OPAs is an incorrect answer. The team has already tried the known mitigation plan, the mitigation tasks that worked previously, and it failed. Blindly looking for other generic plans in the OPAs without first understanding why the current situation is different is not a targeted or effective approach. The immediate need is to analyze the current specific problem. C. Use a contingency budget to implement schedule compression. This is an incorrect answer. This jumps directly to a solution, schedule compression, and a funding source, contingency budget, without first understanding the root cause of the problem. Schedule compression addresses a schedule delay, but it does not solve the underlying impediment. This action treats the symptom, not the cause. D. Reassess the issue as part of monitoring and controlling. This is a correct answer. The original solution has failed, which indicates that the nature of the impediment or its context has changed. The correct project management process is to re-enter the monitoring and controlling cycle. This involves reassessing the issue to perform a new root cause analysis, understanding why the previous solution is no longer effective, and then developing a new corrective action plan based on this updated understanding. Question 417. A client's company announces a reorganization, which includes changes in senior management involved in the project. The new project sponsor is asking to put the project on hold until they review the scope. What should the project manager do next? A. Wait for a new project scope from the new project sponsor. B. Discuss the requirements and update the project management plan with the new sponsor. C. Discuss the issue with the project team and update the project management plan. D. Amend the risk register and provide suggested mitigation strategies. This question tests your ability to manage stakeholder engagement during a significant organizational change. The arrival of a new project sponsor is a critical moment that requires the project manager to be proactive in building a relationship and reestablishing alignment on the project's objectives. The key is to engage the new sponsor directly to understand their perspective and collaboratively determine the path forward. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Wait for a new project scope from the new project sponsor. This is an incorrect answer. This is a passive approach that abdicates the project manager's leadership role. A proactive project manager should not simply wait for instructions. They should facilitate the review process by providing the new sponsor with the necessary project information, like the current scope, business case, and status, to guide the conversation to a productive outcome. B. Discuss the requirements and update the project management plan with the new sponsor. This is a correct answer. This is the most proactive and collaborative response. The project manager should immediately schedule a meeting with the new sponsor to review the existing requirements, scope, and business case. This engagement helps the sponsor understand the project and allows the project manager to understand the sponsor's perspective. This discussion will form the basis for any potential changes, which would then be reflected in an updated project management plan after following the formal change control process. C. Discuss the issue with the project team and update the project management plan. This is an incorrect answer. While the project team must be kept informed, the primary issue is with the new sponsor. Updating the project management plan with the team without the sponsor's input is pointless, as the sponsor is the one who has requested the hold and the review. The alignment must happen with the sponsor first. D. Amend the risk register and provide suggested mitigation strategies. This is an incorrect answer. While a new sponsor and a project hold are certainly risks that should be documented in the risk register, this is not the most important next action. The immediate priority is to engage the new sponsor to resolve the uncertainty. The proactive leadership action is to meet with the sponsor, option B, to address the situation directly. Question 418. The Project Management Office, PMO, assigns a project manager who specializes in hybrid approaches to a predictive project that is off track from both the cost and schedule perspectives. The project runs into further delays as the project manager is ramping up on the project. The stakeholders are unhappy and ask senior management to replace the project manager. How should the project manager approach this situation? A. Meet with the stakeholders to understand their concerns and define an action plan to resolve issues. B. Escalate the stakeholder issue to the management team and ask for help with resolving the conflict. C. Socialize with the stakeholders to better understand their needs and reset expectations. D. Continue work on the project until the stakeholders and management come to a decision. This question tests the project manager's ability to handle a stakeholder crisis and demonstrate leadership. When stakeholders lose confidence and ask for the project manager's replacement, the PM must take immediate, direct, and constructive action. The key is to engage with the unhappy stakeholders to understand their specific concerns and collaboratively develop a plan to address them, rather than being passive or immediately escalating the issue. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Meet with the stakeholders to understand their concerns and define an action plan to resolve issues. This is a correct answer. This is a proactive, professional, and structured approach. By meeting directly with the stakeholders to listen to their concerns, the project manager demonstrates ownership and accountability. Following this by collaboratively defining an action plan moves the focus from blame to problem solving and is the most effective way to regain the stakeholders' trust and get the project back on track. B. Escalate the stakeholder issue to the management team and ask for help in resolving the conflict. This is an incorrect answer. The stakeholders have already escalated the issue to senior management. Escalating it again from the project manager's side shows a lack of ownership and an inability to handle conflict. A project manager is expected to attempt to resolve issues with stakeholders directly before asking management to intervene. C. Socialize with the stakeholders to better understand their needs and reset expectations. This is an incorrect answer because it is too informal and vague. While understanding needs and resetting expectations are important, the term socialize implies casual conversations. The situation is a crisis that requires a formal, structured meeting with a clear agenda and a tangible outcome, an action plan, as described in option A. D. Continue to work on the project until the stakeholders and management come to a decision. This is an incorrect answer. This is a passive wait-and-see approach. It demonstrates a lack of leadership and allows the negative situation to fester. A proactive project manager must address a direct challenge to their role and the project direction immediately. Question 419. A project manager just finished a meeting to identify the main stakeholders of the project. What should the project manager do next? A. Analyze the stakeholders. B. Monitor all stakeholders. C. Keep all stakeholders informed. D. Engage the stakeholders. This question tests your knowledge of the correct sequence of processes in the project stakeholder management knowledge area. After identifying who the stakeholders are, a project manager must follow a structured process to determine how to best engage them. The key is to understand that you cannot effectively plan engagement or communicate with stakeholders until you have first analyzed their interests, influence, and expectations. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Analyze the stakeholders. This is the correct answer. According to the standard project management process, after the identified stakeholders process is complete, the immediate next step is to perform stakeholder analysis. This is a key part of the planned stakeholder engagement process. The analysis involves assessing each stakeholder's interest, influence, power, and potential impact on the project. The results of this analysis are essential for developing an effective engagement and communication strategy. B. Monitor all stakeholders. This is an incorrect answer. Monitor stakeholder engagement is the final process in this knowledge area. It is a continuous activity that occurs throughout the project lifecycle after an engagement plan has been created and is being executed. It is not the next step after simply identifying stakeholders. C. Keep all stakeholders informed. This is an incorrect answer. This describes an action that is part of the managed stakeholder engagement process. It is premature to start informing stakeholders without first analyzing them to determine what information they need, how they want to receive it, and how often. D. Engage the stakeholders. This is an incorrect answer. This is a general description of the managed stakeholder engagement process. You cannot effectively engage stakeholders without first having a plan, and you cannot create a plan without first analyzing them. This option skips the critical analysis and planning steps. Question 420. A project manager has heard about the large volume of emails the team receives each day, which prevents them from doing project work. One team member has stated that they would like to be able to access project-related information when needed. To what type of communication is the team member referring? A. Pull communication. B. Mass communication. C. Interactive communication. D. Push communication. This question tests your knowledge of the different communication methods used in project management. The scenario describes a problem caused by an overuse of one method, push, and a team member's request for a different, more efficient method. The key is to match the team member's specific desire to access information when needed with its correct formal definition. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Pull communication. This is a correct answer. Pull communication is a method where information is made available in a central location, like an intranet site, a shared server, or a knowledge base, and the recipients are responsible for retrieving it at their convenience. The team member's request to access project-related information when needed is the textbook definition of pull communication. B. Mass communication. This is an incorrect answer. Mass communication is a general term, but is not one of the three formally defined communication methods in this context: push, pull, interactive. It does not specifically describe the method requested. C. Interactive communication. This is an incorrect answer. Interactive communication involves a real-time, multi-directional exchange of information, such as in a meeting or a video conference. While valuable, this is not what the team member is asking for. They are asking for a way to access static information on their own time. D. Push communication. This is an incorrect answer. Push communication is the method that is causing the problem in the scenario. Sending a large volume of emails is a classic example of pushing information to recipients, whether they need it that moment or not. The team member is asking for an alternative to this method. Question 421. 2 team members were recently released from a project because the customer reduced the budget. However, the Agile team is still receiving the same, if not more, work requirements as before. How should the Agile project leader resolve this situation? A. Update the project budget with the released team members. B. Update the restriction log with a new team capacity. C. Explain the new project requirements to the team. D. Explain the new team velocity to the customer. This question tests your understanding of key Agile concepts, specifically team velocity and stakeholder communication. The scenario presents a common challenge where a team's capacity is reduced, but stakeholder expectations for work output remain unchanged. The key is to use the team's velocity as an empirical, data-driven tool to transparently communicate the impact of the change and reset expectations. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Update the project budget with the released team members. This is an incorrect answer. This is an administrative task that reflects a past event, the budget reduction. While necessary, it does not resolve the current problem, which is the mismatch between the team's new, lower capacity and the ongoing high demand for work. B. Update the restriction log with the new team capacity. This is an incorrect answer. There is no standard project management document called a restriction log. While the reduced capacity is a constraint, the primary issue isn't just documenting it internally. It's communicating the impact of this constraint to the stakeholders who are providing the work requirements. C. Explain the new project requirements to the team. This is an incorrect answer. The problem isn't that the team doesn't understand the requirements. The problem is that the team no longer has the capacity to deliver the same volume of requirements as before. This action fails to address the root cause of the conflict. D. Explain the new team velocity to the customer. This is a correct answer. In Agile, velocity is the measure of a team's capacity to deliver work. When 2 team members are released, the team's velocity will decrease. The most critical and proactive action the Agile leader can take is to communicate this new, lower velocity to the customer. This provides a transparent, data-based explanation for why the team cannot take on the same amount of work as before and serves as a foundation for a necessary conversation about prioritizing the backlog. Question 422. One of the team members is always late to the daily stand-up meeting. What should the project manager do? A. Schedule the meeting at the end of the day to accommodate everyone. B. Reinforce the ground rules for stand-up meetings with the entire team. C. Speak with the team member directly to reinforce the ground rules. D. Ignore the situation since the team member is accomplishing their deliverables. This question tests your ability to handle individual team member performance and adherence to team norms. When a single team member is not following an agreed-upon process, the project manager's response should be direct and targeted, addressing the individual's behavior privately before taking broader team-level action. The key is to resolve the specific issue without disrupting the entire team. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Schedule the meeting at the end of the day to accommodate everyone. This is an incorrect answer. This action punishes the entire team by changing a standard practice to accommodate one person's behavior. Daily stand-ups are typically held in the morning to plan for the day ahead. Moving the meeting for one individual is inefficient and sets a poor precedent. B. Reinforce the ground rules for stand-up meetings with the entire team. This is an incorrect answer. While this might be a later step if the problem persists, it is not the best first action. Addressing the entire team when only one person is the issue is an indirect approach. It can make the rest of the team feel admonished for no reason and may not be effective in changing the specific individual's behavior. C. Speak with a team member directly to reinforce the ground rules. This is a correct answer. This is the most professional and effective first step. The issue is with a single individual, so the project manager should address it with that individual directly and privately. This allows the project manager to understand if there is a specific reason for the tardiness and to reinforce the importance of the team's agreed-upon ground rules without publicly embarrassing the team member. D. Ignore the situation since the team member is accomplishing their deliverables. This is an incorrect answer. Ignoring the issue is poor leadership. The daily stand-up is a critical team synchronization event, and tardiness is disruptive. Allowing one team member to consistently break the rules undermines the established team norms and can lead to a drop in morale and discipline for the entire team. Question 423. A project manager sent the first communication about the project management plan to the team. The next day, 2 field engineers were asking about their roles and the project schedule. What should the project manager have done? A. Sent the roles and responsibilities matrix along with the project management plan. B. Confirmed that the communication was understood and solicited feedback from the team. C. Briefed each team member on their roles before sending the project management plan. D. Discussed the roles of the managers to help explain them to their team members. This question tests your knowledge of effective communication management. The scenario highlights a common failure, where information is distributed but not properly understood by the recipients. The key principle is that effective communication is a two-way process. The sender is not only responsible for transmitting the message, but also for confirming that it has been received and understood, often by creating a feedback loop. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Sent the roles and responsibilities matrix along with the project management plan. This is an incorrect answer. While a roles and responsibilities matrix is a valuable document, this information should already be part of the project management plan. Sending another document does not guarantee it will be read or understood any more than the original plan was. It fails to address the core breakdown in the communication process itself. B. Confirmed that the communication was understood and solicited feedback from the team. This is a correct answer. This action directly addresses a failure in the communication process. After sending a critical document, the project manager should have followed up to ensure the team members received it, read it, and understood its contents. Soliciting feedback or asking clarifying questions is the best way to confirm understanding and close the communication loop. This proactive step would have revealed and resolved the engineer's confusion immediately. C. Briefed each team member on their roles before sending the project management plan. This is an incorrect answer. While this might be a helpful action, briefing every single team member individually on a large project is often impractical and inefficient. A more scalable approach is to communicate to the group and then confirm understanding, as described in option B. D. Discuss the roles of the managers to help explain them to their team members. This is an incorrect answer. This represents a delegation of the project manager's communication responsibility. The project manager is ultimately accountable for ensuring their project team understands the project plan. Relying on others to pass the message along creates an extra step where the message can be diluted or delayed. Question 424. According to the project contract, the delivery date is approaching. However, one important material is still not on site. The construction work will have to stop and wait for the special material, delaying the project. What should the project manager do? A. Engage the project team to look for alternatives to find a solution. B. Record it in the risk register. C. Ask the client to help solve the problem. D. Start procuring this material from another supplier. This question tests your problem-solving skills and understanding of the project manager's leadership role when facing a critical issue. The scenario describes an active problem that is causing a work stoppage. The key is to select the most proactive and collaborative action that focuses on finding a solution by leveraging the expertise of the entire project team. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Engage the project team to look for alternatives to find a solution. This is a correct answer. This is a proactive and collaborative problem-solving approach. The project team, with its diverse expertise, is the best resource for brainstorming potential solutions. These alternatives could include using a different material, modifying construction process, or identifying an expedited shipping method. Engaging the team is the most effective first step to address the issue head-on. B. Record it in the risk register. This is an incorrect answer. The material not being on site is no longer a risk, a potential future event. It is an active issue that is currently impacting the project. While it should be documented in the issue log, the risk register is the wrong document. More importantly, simply documenting the problem is a passive action and does not solve the immediate crisis. C. Ask the client to help solve the problem. This is an incorrect answer. While keeping the client informed is important, asking them to solve an internal supply chain problem is generally inappropriate. It is the project managers and their organization's responsibility to manage suppliers and resolve such issues. Escalating the problem to the client without first attempting to solve it with the team is a sign of poor project management. D. Start procuring this material from another supplier. This is an incorrect answer because it is a premature and potentially risky unilateral decision. The project likely has a contract with the original supplier. Procuring from another source without reviewing the existing contract could lead to a breach of contract, financial penalties, or receiving a material that doesn't meet specifications. This is a potential solution that should be evaluated by the team, not an immediate first action. Question 425. A functional manager is concerned that the project's quality management techniques have advanced beyond the department's capabilities and wants the project team to review all quality management activities in 2 full-day workshops the following week. What should the project manager do next? A. Indicate that this was not a requirement identified during project planning, and it is outside of the scope. B. Draft a project decision request to include in the scope for the current iteration and ask the sponsor to approve. C. Explain that the team is fully dedicated to the current sprint activities and negotiate a mutually agreeable time. D. Add this to the project backlog and have the product owner determine where it fits in terms of priority. This question tests your ability to manage stakeholder requests while protecting the project team's focus, particularly in an agile or hybrid environment. The scenario involves a significant, unplanned request from a key stakeholder that would disrupt the current sprint. The key is to find a collaborative response that acknowledges the stakeholder's concern, explains the project's constraints, and negotiates a mutually acceptable path forward. Let's analyze the options in order. A. Indicate that this was not a requirement identified during project planning, and it is outside of the scope. This is an incorrect answer. This is a confrontational and unhelpful response. While the workshops may be technically out of scope, the functional manager is raising a valid concern. Rejecting the request outright will damage the relationship with a key stakeholder and fails to address their underlying issue. B. Draft a project decision request to include in the scope for the current iteration and ask the sponsor to approve. This is an incorrect answer. This approach is overly bureaucratic and doesn't solve the immediate timing conflict. The main problem is a demand for next week. Even with sponsor approval, pulling the team for 2 days would disrupt the sprint goal. The project manager should first try to resolve the scheduling conflict through negotiation. C. Explain that the team is fully dedicated to the current sprint activities and negotiate a mutually agreeable time. This is a correct answer. This response is both respectful and professional. It protects the integrity of the sprint by clearly stating the team's existing commitment and the negative impact of the request. Simultaneously, it shows a collaborative spirit by acknowledging the importance of the manager's request and seeking to negotiate a solution that works for both parties, e.g., scheduling the workshops after the current sprint ends. D. Add this to the project backlog and have the product owner determine where it fits in terms of priority. This is an incorrect answer. A 2-day workshop is a project-related activity, not typically a product backlog item, which usually represents value for the end user. Treating it as a backlog item to be prioritized by the product owner is not the correct way to handle this type of stakeholder request. The immediate issue is the timing, which requires direct negotiation. All right, that wraps up all the questions for today's video. I hope you found it helpful for your studies. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Let's build a strong learning community together. Happy learning, and I'll see you in the next one.